Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome back to the Log Show here on YouTube. I am your host, Logan Likeb, here on this glorious Tuesday, August 19th, and we have a lot to talk about. We had Jets Giants this weekend. I know everybody in this area loves to talk about Jets Giants, what happened. It's the biggest thing around here, even though it's always a preseason game. I think they play once every 4 years, if I remember correctly, in the regular season. When it's a regular season game, it is so fun. It's a preseason game every year, though, either way. So that is what we have on the docket. That for the NFL. We're going to talk about rookies. Not only that, Aiden Hutchinson trade rumors getting heavy. Micah Parsons trade rumors getting heavy. Brian Robinson Jr. on the trade block. I'll get into all of that NFL wise. I'll talk about the Yankees. I'll talk about the MLB as a whole, because at the Little League World Series, we had Rob Manfred talk about expansion, talk about possible realignment due to geographical locations. So, playing around with that is always fun, getting in the sports fan imagination brain right there. You can only imagine what those divisions will look like. We'll talk about that. Like I said, the Yankees. And not only that, something I haven't been able to talk about in a little while here on this show. We had UFC 319 on Saturday. Now, I did go to the Jets-Giants game. I was very tired when I got home. I was not able to watch the event live, but trust me, I've gone back. I've watched what I've needed to watch. I've done my research. I've read every article, and I'm not surprised by anything that anybody is saying, so we'll talk about that and everything. Honestly, I actually want to just kick off the show with that and talk about 319, because I will be honest, as a card as a whole, looking back at it from what I read, what I saw, all of that, I will be 110% completely honest. I completely loved the card. It was very exciting card. Going into this card, we have 6 ever spinning back elbow knockouts. You get them back to back in the co-main event and the fight before that, with the one by Paredes and the one by former Bellator star Leron Murphy. So that was fun. You have Kaya Sierra. We'll talk about that MVP. I do want to start with talking about the event with the first fight of the night that I'm assuming not a lot of people tuned into, but was a big one for me, a big one that I wanted to go back and watch after missing it. And that was the tough flyweight championship, I guess, the finale of the Ultimate Fighter season 33 between Joseph Morales and my man Alibi Idris. And I'll be honest, going into that one, I was very excited, a lot more excited for that one than we are. Still waiting for the Rodrigo versus Daniil fight for any of you who have watched Tough 33. If you haven't, I definitely recommend going back and watching it. It was a great season. A lot of great fighters on this season of Tough. They have I'm blanking on a lot of their names right now because the season did end 2 weeks ago. Outside of the people I've written down, I'm blanking on a lot of their names. But there's one kid from Mexico who's really good on Team Cormier, who gets eliminated by Joseph Morales in the second round. There's a guy, Matt Dixon, on Team Sonnen, who I thought was a very, very exciting fighter. I'll talk about him in a little bit. But going into this Morales-Alibi fight, I really thought Alibi was going to win this fight. Watching that whole season of Tough, Alibi being from Kazakhstan and just being from an area where we've seen a lot of great fighters come out of, those Caucasus Mountain regions where, Hazmat's from, not Drakus, sorry, Umar, all these dudes, Islam, Habib, all of those guys are from this mountain region over there. Marab in Georgia and Ilya and all the Georgians are from over there as well. And I really liked how Alibi looked in the semifinal fight in the last episode of Tough that he was in, that he fought in. I thought he fought very well. And as much as I like Joseph Morales, someone who had fought in the UFC before the season of The Ultimate Fighter, I really thought Alibi was a better all-around fighter. But Joseph Morales really held through, had a great first round, got a takedown in the second round and ended up squeezing in a nice submission over Alibi to become the tough champion, to get his contract and a shot back in the UFC. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw Alibi back in the UFC at some point very soon, even though he lost that finale because of how good of an all-around fighter he was. And it's just always fun watching The Ultimate Fighter, especially if you're someone who wants to get into fighting. I always recommend it because you find these young guys that you can get attached to if they do blow up. If not, you have guys on the undercard that you know about, that you like to root for. You see a lot of good fighters, where they come from, the stories of these fighters, and it's just entertaining. It's a good way to find out the technicality of the sport, especially when, 2 seasons ago, I feel like The Ultimate Fighter took a huge hit when you had the McGregor versus Michael Chandler season and you didn't have a fight at the end of that. And then you have that bounce back season with Pena, and you have that comeback season with Pena and sorry, I'm trying to fix the mic there, Ben. Trying to help you out, buddy. How's it sound now, everybody? Everybody. But you have that fight now with, or that season of Tough. You have Tough 32 with Alexa Grasso and or not Alexa Grasso, sorry, with Juliana Pena and Amanda Nunes, and you have that fight go through, and it's a very, very interesting fight, to say the least. When or not fight, it's a very interesting season of Tough. Sorry, I got distracted by the whole chat thing. Trying to make sure my mic's good for everybody. So even people coming back watching this, you guys, coming back on the old YouTube video, everyone can hear me well. But as I was saying, I feel like Tough took a big hit in 30 with season 31 and Michael Chandler versus McGregor, not having a fight at the end of that, knowing how McGregor is. And just having that whole situation of not having a fight at the end of it, then you have the Pena Nunes that ends up as a solid season of Tough. But I will be honest, not everyone's tuning into a season of Tough with as big as a draw as Amanda Nunes is. 2 female coaches aren't the biggest draw for newer UFC fans, if I'm going to be honest. Even though Amanda Nunes is the GOAT and everyone's heard of her, it's not as big as a draw as, especially the year before, you just had the McGregor-Chandler thing and you had to take a year off. So to try to get people back into Tough, you had to find something that you knew was going to end up in a fight at the end. And you got that with Pena and Nunes. Coming back this year, I do really love the idea of what they did. Getting DC and Sonnen, it's the last year. I feel like Dana probably knew that. It's the last year of the ESPN deal, so you don't want to have a fight at the end of this that's that big. You have Sonnen and DC, who just started their show on ESPN, so the whole season of Tough was able to hype up that good guy versus bad guy show because it started right as that show was starting. And really, you have a great season of Tough, and I recommend everyone goes on ESPN Plus, or when it moves over to Paramount Plus, you go back and watch this season of Tough so that you can see these guys like Joseph Morales, like Alibi, like what we're going to see if you guys tune in when it happens at whatever event it is, because Rodrigo got injured in his camp. It was supposed to happen at 319. The Rodrigo versus Daniil fight is a classic striker versus wrestler fight. So that one's going to be a classic with Daniil. If you watch that the semifinal fight, I even recommend just going back and doing that, watching the Matt Dixon versus Daniil fight, because that one was a war for a round and a half, and you see Matt Dixon get clocked. It happens, but even Matt Dixon is someone you watch throughout that season, and is someone who I wouldn't be surprised gets a UFC contract soon if he hops on the Contender Series or any of those types of, gives himself another opportunity. I think he's ready for the UFC the way he fought, and he just got cracked by someone who's a little bit stronger than him. That was the guy who, again, I would say, remember that name going into this. Remember the name of Matt Dixon and what he's able to do. I think you ate fight with the Tough 33 finale, and if you haven't watched it, I recommend going back and watching it 100%. All of Tough 33. It was so much fun to watch all of it. Going later into this card, I mean, I brought it up before. You have those two insane knockouts by Carlos Paredes and Leron Murphy or Leron Murphy. I don't really know how you pronounce it. I didn't have the sound on when I was watching the fights. When I was going back, so I'll be honest. I think it's Leron. I think it's Leron Murphy is how you pronounce it. He got Andre Pico at 1-2. The sound of the Jeff Neal one had me scared for Jeff Neal's health. It was glad to hear that he was okay because he ducked right into that. The way that Paredes aimed that spinning elbow was for it to land on Jeff Neal's chin, and Jeff Neal ducked, and it hit him right on the temple. The way it sounded was like his skull cracked right open. It was a nasty, nasty knockout and a big win for Carlos Paredes to be able to move up in that division. And then you have someone like Lerone Murphy who cracks Andre Pico in his first UFC fight. Was a big star over there in Bellator. I haven't really gone back to look at his Bellator fights. I don't watch a lot of Bellator, but I've heard of him before in Bellator. When he comes back and he beats an Andre Pico who, if I remember correctly, was ranked about 15. He was definitely ranked in the top 15 fighters. So to say that it wasn't a big win for him coming over, it was a huge win for Lerone Murphy. To see where they put him next, to see what he could do in the UFC after not being here for so long will be exciting. But then we also saw stuff on the other side with Kaaskera, who people were very, very hyped for Kaaskera coming into the UFC. I know you guys could go back to my show around the time where he fights Andre Pantoja, and I thought he could have beat Pantoja going into the fight. Now, after watching the fight, it was not the Kaaskera that we had saw over as a kickboxer in Ryzen over in Japan. It was not the same fighter. And now you go out and you take the loss to Jeff Neal, and it's just... It's a really tough time and a tough situation for Kaaskera. I think this whole UFC test has just been a crash and burn. And if we're going to sit here and be honest, I think that I don't know if you're the UFC. I don't know how many fights is on his contract, but I don't know if you renew it. I don't know if you cut him. But a submission loss to Tim Elliott in the year of 2025 is rough for someone like Kaaskera, who coming into the UFC only a few months ago was someone who was in a very, very, very good spot. And then we move on to what was... before I actually bring up the main event, I do also want to bring up the Cannonier fight. That was the one fight of the night I'll say was very, very shocking to me. I thought Cannonier would be able to hold his own against MVP. Someone who's aging, someone who came to the UFC late, was not doing great. He wasn't doing bad, but he wasn't really doing what we had seen out of Michael Venom Page throughout the time he was in Bellator and all those other promotions. But he absolutely embarrassed Janet Cannonier. I was looking at the stats. I saw the 2 knockdowns, but statistically they weren't listed as knockdowns. So I don't really know what was up with that. But I did see it was embarrassing for Cannonier, bro. Like, I saw people on the internet, and this was the best comparison. It's like if you've ever played UFC 5 online, and you play against that dude who, like, they try to test if you're up in the next division and you're not ready, and that dude just pieces you up and just keeps hitting the taunt button, and like you lose by decision because you're like, yeah, I held through that. That's the confidence you're giving yourself is he ain't put me to sleep though. But like, dude was pressing you the whole time, knocking you down, taunt, boom, boom, knock down, taunt. That's what that fight kind of felt like. To see the Killer Gorilla go through that was tough. And then we move on to the main event. Now, I don't know, man. A lot of people are very mad at this main event, and I'm not going to sit here and say like the main event was good, nor was it entertaining. But I think as if anybody had seen Khamzat Chimaev fight before, was it necessarily surprising? No. This was the exact fight I expected Khamzat to do. I saw a lot of people saying, oh, if this goes deep, I think Drakus could take it. I felt the exact opposite most of the time. I felt it was interesting because the way Drakus fights, he's a very odd fighter. He's a very interesting, off-putting, weird fighter. But Drakus isn't really he doesn't have the ground ability. And everybody knew what Khamzat was going to do early. Everybody knew that, I mean, in his past 7 fights, or I think it's in every single one of his UFC fights, this man has had a takedown within, the first 10 to 25 seconds. So with that whole situation, I really don't know what people were thinking with Khamzat. I mean, obviously looking at the stats, don't get me wrong, Khamzat was absolute dominant. And that's what you're trying to show in a UFC fight is absolute dominance. But to say that it was fun to watch or that it was impressive, I guess some people would call it impressive. Like I was watching MMA Guru and Demetrius Johnson the other day. They were talking about that whole situation and about how just like Demetrius Johnson was like, it's just like if he did stand up and box the whole time and there wasn't an ounce of wrestling and it's an MMA fight and you have the ability to wrestle and all that, but it was a wrestling match is what it felt like. Like even looking at the statistics, if you read into the statistics of the fight, you could tell that it was like that. Khamzat Chimaev had 526 total strikes and 35 significant strikes. 35 of the 526 total strikes thrown by Khamzat Chimaev were significant strikes on Saturday. There's no attempt for a finish. That's what people were upset about. And that's what I'm also kind of upset about, I will say. And I think you have to be punished for that in the UFC. I understand he had control time. Don't get me wrong. Did Khamzat Chimaev destroy Drakus du Plessis and absolutely dominate position the whole time? Yes. Yes, he did. By far, Khamzat Chimaev sat there and controlled Drakus du Plessis and had top position and ground control the entire fight. But not a lick of the fight was entertaining. And you are trying to make money. And there's got to be something done about it where, I mean, I don't know, because that's the hard part to say is like, you can't say Khamzat wasn't being active. There's 500 strikes thrown. But they're just to stop Drakus from transitioning. Like, it's nothing of significance. There's no attempt to finish the fight. It's, I'm just going to control you for 30 minutes. I'm just going to control you for 30 minutes. And as much as I want to compare it to Khabib and Islam and Merab and these guys, and those guys all go for finishes at some point, Islam didn't even try. It didn't feel like he tried once to go for a submission or go for anything. It felt like there was no attempt at an not Islam, sorry, I kept saying Islam. I felt like there was no attempt at a Khamzat in this entire fight to get a finish. And that's what sucks. Because he could have. He probably could have. There were multiple opportunities that I felt like I saw in that fight where Khamzat could have just transitioned, started going bop, 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 bop. And he didn't. He just didn't. At any point. So, I don't know. I'd have to look at I gotta look at the rest of the middleweight division because like thinking of who's there, Hamzat's beat everyone. I mean, I guess you might have Nasruddin. I guess it has to be him. Like you're not having Hamzat fight Sean Strickland because that's gonna end up the same way. You're not having him fight Izzy because Izzy just lost a fight pretty recently. Like who does he? It has to be Nasruddin. It has to be Nasruddin Imanov. I don't know, man. I, I just hope in whatever title defense that Chimaev has that he tries to get a finish. I don't want this to be a title reign where he does this every single fight. Every single fight. Like if I'm seeing 500 strikes and not at least like 70 of them are significant, what are you even trying to do? No submission attempts, nothing. You know, people go back and talk about Kamaru Usman and Israel Adesanya and how they became merchants when they were champions of just trying to tire people out and holding them against the cage. But if they smelt the finish they tried to get it, you could at least give them that. No? It was an annoying fight. It definitely was. I'm going to move on from it and talk about something a lot more positive. But it was not a fun fight. And, I mean, congratulations to Hamzat. He's your new middleweight champion. I felt like it was going to happen sooner rather than later that Chimaev was going to win a championship. But to say at the least that Hamzat looked great and didn't just look like someone who is going to be a weight merchant who's going to just sit on top of you and just tap your chin to just make the judges go, well, of course he won the fight. You're going to get hate. You're going to be hated really fast by a lot of UFC fans. He already is after that performance against Drakus. He already is. He already is. I'm going to move on to the Yankees, though. The Yankees. I love the Yankees, man. I love the Yankees. I like, right now, I went on so many rants when I came back from my comeback and all this over the past few weeks about the Yankees and how poor the Yankees have played. And I went on a big rant last week about August is your chance. You're not good in August. We talked about the winning percentage, how you're under 500 over the past couple years in August, but how you're great against the Twins, and you start the month off against who else? The Twins. And then we had St. Louis, and I talked about how that's a winnable series. And now tonight we have Tampa, and then we go into the biggest series of our season. And now since I had that rant, I'm convinced that my rant got to Aaron Boone somehow. My little small show, New Jersey show, no Yankee jerseys up anywhere, but I think Aaron Boone saw my show and he heard me, and he was listening to the fan base. And he snapped some sense into these guys. And he said, August is our spot, guys. This is where we show that we want to win, that we want to give ourselves a chance to not only make the wild card, but win the goddamn division. Please. Please. And they've put themselves in the exact spot that they would want to be in for that to happen. And what that spot is you came out here over the last 6 games, over this past week, since I have last been here and talked, and you won 5 of your last 6. You're second in the league in home runs over the last 6 games. You're fourth in the league in runs over the last 6 games. You sweep St. Louis. Now, sadly, in that sweep of St. Louis, we couldn't have Max Fried, start clicking again. I was really hoping it would. But Max Fried didn't start clicking, but what we have had is Bednar started clicking. He's had a 0 ERA over his last 6 appearances, 3 saves, 12 strikeouts in 6 innings. Judge is starting to feel better in his elbow. You can see it in the way he's playing. His play is slowly improving. He's hitting the ball better. Stanton's playing well. Everyone who we need to be playing well is playing well. And also, Aaron Boone is doing things that at least seems like when he's looking at Volpe and he's looking at these people who have been struggling defensively, that he's now looking at them and going, it's now or never. And you saw that 2 days ago with Volpe getting sat for the first time, and I think it was 34 games. He had 34 straight starts at shortstop, or like 54, something like that. Straight games starting at shortstop since the, Oswaldo Cabrera injury and all that. He's been our only starter there. And you saw that. And Aaron Boone said, I'm willing to bench him. And he plays Caballero. Caballero didn't have the best performance, had an RBI on 1 hit. But it might show Volpe that, hey, you need to play better if you want to be consistently in this lineup. You're not an automatic, consistently in this lineup player. We're going to make moves when we need to. And if you're not playing well, we have people who will play well, Volpe. We have people who hit just as well as you. Caballero's hitting no worse than Volpe is, because Volpe, we all love Volpe hitting, right? We all think Volpe's a great hitter. Yeah. So whoever's going to start at shortstop could be just as good as a hitter. So if you're going to struggle on the field, we're going to put someone else there. Yeah, the starting pitching does have to be better. The starting pitching 100% has to be better. Luis Hill has been playing solid since his comeback. But Max Fried needs to really snap into it. He needs to look in the mirror and go, before the All-Star break, you were by far the best pitcher in the league. And I don't know what happened, Max. I don't know what happened. I don't know if you're hitting a slight fatigue. I don't know what's going on. But be honest with the team, and let's get you back to form. Let's get you back in the win column. You started the season today. And don't get me wrong, I love Max Fried. I think he's a great player, and he's playing great for the Yankees this year. But I also feel like he's got to pick it up if we want to go on a run right now. Now's the time to start heating up again, because October's coming fast. October is coming fast, and games we need to win is coming fast. I have it written down in my notes exactly like this. September saves the season. I went on the rant about August already, and we haven't played Boston yet. But by God, does September save the season? And that's something the Yankees make sure in that Yankees organization also thinks that September saves the season to where we wanted it to. We already lost the series to at the beginning of this month. After that, you go straight into your last series of the series with another series against the Twins, the White Sox, and 2 series against Baltimore, who has been absolutely atrocious this year. So your last 4 series are very, very winnable. So we're not going to even talk about the end of September when you have Baltimore and you have Minnesota and you have Chicago. You have the Chicago White Sox. We're not going to talk about that because those are, like I'm saying, very winnable series. Just like the White Sox at the end of this month. Very winnable series. Right before September starts, right after Boston. We get the White Sox in between to end the month. And I like that. I love it. And August was the base. This was leg day. August was leg day. And it's a tough day to get through. But August was by far leg day. But September saves the season by far. You are now going into Tampa tonight, and I really hope you get you get this weird 2-game series against Tampa, and that ends the season series against Tampa. And Tampa, as much as they're around us, they're winnable. I watched us beat Tampa. I watched us come back from Tampa at home. You have very winnable games coming up here with Tampa in these back-to-back 2 games, tonight and tomorrow, then, like I have been preaching, and I can't preach it any more than I have, you have the most important series of the 2025-2026 MLB season, or whatever you want to call it, and that is the fact that you are now looking at a team that you are let me get this right so I have it right. You right now are half a game. No, not even. You're technically tied because they've played 2 more games than us. So you are now pretty much tied with the Boston Red Sox. You have these 2 games against Tampa. I'm assuming they might be off for the next 2 days. I'll have to look at their schedule. But you have these 2 games against Tampa. You're 5 games behind the Toronto Blue Jays. You're 5 games behind the Toronto Blue Jays, who have not been playing well recently. They're 5-5 in their last 10. We're sitting there at 7-3 in our last 10. We're doing well. You're 5 games behind Toronto. So is Boston. You have the Boston series come up. If you could take a 3-game lead against Boston, or not even, if you win 3 games, let's say, best case scenario could happen, and Toronto starts to lose. You could walk away from this Boston series a game or 2 out, if not in the lead. This series against Boston is so important, and I can't hammer that home enough. I can't, and it's all clicking right now for them, and it's not for either of these teams in the division. It's not for Boston. Boston's 4-6 in their last 10. Toronto's 5-5 in the last 10. Both of them have lost back-to-back games. Now is your time as the New York Yankees to move through this, to get through this, to get through October, or not October. I don't know why I keep saying October. To get through August and really lock in for September, and really lock in and go on a run and prove that this team could be a World Series team, because you have the pieces. You do have the pieces to go on this run. Aaron Boone 100% does. You have Cody Bellinger. You have Aaron Judge. You have Giancarlo Stanton. You have Max Fried if he gets back to form. You have Luis Gil, who's playing well. You have, Ryan McMahon, who's played well since he came here. We don't have to be stuck with Volpe in every single game now. Hopefully, Camilo Doval, again, can start playing a little better, and he could be a big relief piece. Same thing with Luke Weaver. Hopefully, he could understand that Bednar is clicking right now in the closer spot. So it's not Weaver, but that's okay. You could still be a great relief guy for us. You could still pitch 7, put Doval in an 8, and then put Bednar in a 9. And that 1, 2, 3 could be deadly if they all go back to form. But you're in a spot right now as the Yankees. You are in a spot right now. And you don't know how much longer this is going to be the division with everything that was said at the Little League World Series. Moving on to that. I don't know how many people saw that. I don't know who's still listening in the chat here. I haven't looked over there in a while. I'm still looking at my notes, but I don't know who saw that. I don't know what everyone's thoughts on that. At the Little League World Series games, the Mets Mariners, it was a fun game to watch, fun thing they do every year during the Little League World Series. Yankees were in it last year, and you had that fun situation with Jazz meeting that kid, the kid right after he got traded, and they said they became very good friends and a lot of that. And not only that, you this year have the big news story coming out of it. You have Rob Manfred in an interview. Now, I didn't see the game live, so I don't know if the interview was during the game or during a pregame segment, because I've only read about it. I didn't see the actual interview. But Manfred talked about the future of the MLB and what they are looking at as Major League Baseball. And it's fun to look at this, as many leagues always will, and they always bring it up with movement and expansion. And he brought up the thought of an MLB expansion and what would come with it. Now, I don't know if he brought up any cities because a lot of the ESPN articles and stuff that I saw about it, and we're all bringing up different cities, so I don't know if he said anything about specific markets that they were targeting or anything like that. But the thought of an MLB expansion is definitely interesting because what he also said would come along with that would be realignment. And he said that they were looking into geographical realignment. And that's always fun to look at because when you look at the map, what could happen with geographical realignment is very interesting. You could have a lot of very fun divisions and a lot of very fun new rivalries come out of it. Like when you look up here in the Northeast, you have geographical realignment give you the chance of a division that gives you Mets, Yankees, Phillies, Red Sox. That's fun. 4 teams right now that are hot and young. You know, you have a lot of interesting thoughts that you could do. You can almost have a whole division in Texas alone, like in that whole region down there. You know what I'm saying? You could have a lot of fun with that realignment, and it's interesting to see where you would go. You know, realignment-wise, expansion-wise too. Like what would be those markets realistically with MLB looking at it? Would it be a situation where maybe you look into a Portland or you look into, I don't know, you look into, maybe in Nashville, you look into, I'm just trying to think of cities that don't have baseball. Maybe a Charlotte. Charlotte's been a lot of these cities that could possibly be involved. It would be very fun to see, to say the least. It would be very, very fun to see, to say the least, what could happen with this. And the playoff format, with something like an expansion, like you see it happening right now in the NHL as they just added their 32nd team, which would give no other choice than to the other two major 4 leagues that are left with 30 teams to also look into expansion with the NBA and the MLB. At this point, it would be a no-brainer with the NFL having 32 and now the NHL having 32, and the market's only growing for major sports in this day and age, with them being the only live thing, like being one of the major live things on TV with streaming now. You have this situation where you have no choice but for these leagues to look into an expansion. And expansion changes so much, especially in a sport like baseball, where how will the playoff format go? How will the realignment go? How will it change the draft? Will it change roster size, luxury tax, contract situations? A long time. So to see where Major League Baseball could go with expansion would be very, very fun. And I don't know, because even the NFL, who's at 32 teams, was the first one of the leagues to go into 32 teams, is thinking about expanding overseas and doing all this type of expansion and going up from 34 to maybe, or 32 to maybe 34 or 36 teams. So expansion in a lot of these leagues is usually inevitable. So it's fun to see. If you have a commissioner sitting there saying it's on the horizon, it's being talked about heavy, it's going to be very fun to see if we get to see an MLB expansion draft and all of this coming in and to see what the future of the MLB could be. Next, I do want to move on to the NFL, as I only got 20 minutes left here. I do definitely want to talk about football. Preseason has lost its hype for me, so there's not as much to talk about. I will say there's a lot of news today and yesterday that came out about starting quarterbacks, so I do want to talk about that. Starting off with that, you have over there in Indianapolis, we got Danny Dimes being announced as QB1 over there in Indy, and it's a lot of things that, or it's a big thing that a lot of people, I said it to a lot of people here who are Giants fans here in the New Jersey, New York area, who maybe didn't really realize, and maybe weren't reading and paying attention to what was going down there in Indianapolis, because not a lot of people up here really care about the Colts, and that's a fair thing. No, we're not very close and all that, but it was very obvious very early in training camp that Anthony Richardson was the one on the short leash. And if this quarterback competition was going to be close, it was Danny Dimes' quarterback competition to lose, not his to win. It was very clear from that. It seemed like that very early going into the season or going into training camp. And we see now that, I mean, being announced the starter, is that an official announcement now that you have moved on from Anthony Richardson? I won't say that necessarily, because we saw this last year in Carolina when Bryce Young got benched and everyone said, oh, that's the end of Bryce Young in Carolina. And then he starts the last 4 games and goes absolutely berserk. So will I necessarily say that this is the end of Anthony Richardson in Indianapolis? No. You have a year left on his deal. You can maybe pick up his 5th-year option. I doubt you do that with how high of a pick it was going to be. But it's an interesting situation to see down there, to see what Danny Dimes could do. Many people forget just, what was that, 2-3 years ago? Daniel Dimes was a Pro Bowler and a playoff quarterback. Danny Dimes won a playoff game. People forget about that. Daniel Dimes won a playoff game 3 years ago. He's an athletic guy. And, you know, Shane Steichen down there, the coaching staff down there seemed to really like him. Going into the offseason, it seemed that a lot of the hype for Daniel Jones, at least front office and coaching-wise, was very high, which not a lot of people expected. But after the year in Minnesota with Kevin O'Connell, he was able to humble himself and kind of realize where he was. And maybe we get a Daniel Dimes resurgence down there in Indianapolis. You know, you have pieces. It's a big play offense that Shane Steichen likes to run with Alec Pierce and all those weapons downfield. You have Jonathan Taylor back there. You know, not the best defense in the world, but you have a pretty solid O-line. You got Quentin Nelson, who 2 years ago was the best offensive lineman in the league, is still a top 5 offensive lineman in the league. So that's definitely a fun situation to look at. And to see where the Colts go this year and see how that works out, week 1, week 2. It came out when they announced it today that they're not planning on having him on a very short leash. So it seems like, again, he's got to come out and really, really poop the bed to lose this position, to lose this job back to Anthony Richardson, or Anthony Richardson's got to do something to really impress to take the job away from Daniel Jones. But if Daniel Jones could be healthy here in Indianapolis, it'll be fun to see in a division that, you know, you have Houston, who is very good. I won't say very good because they're very injured with a lot of their stars got injured last year. You're bringing in a lot, both of your running backs who have been exceptional in the past in Bradley Chubb and Joe Mixon, both coming off injuries. You have Nico Collins coming off an injury. You have Tank Dell coming off an injury. So I want to say the AFC South is wide open for the taking for these teams. So to see what Danny Dimes can do down there with this team in Indianapolis will be fun to watch. And I really can't wait till we get to week 1 to see how we do. Yeah. Another big starter announcement that we got was Joe Flacco. That was fun. That was really fun to see, actually. With everybody really going crazy over Shedeur Sanders in week 1 of the preseason. Oh my God, Shedeur threw 2 touchdowns. Oh my God, Shedeur this. Oh my God, Shedeur that. He is 4th on the depth chart. Shedeur Sanders is behind both Kenny Pickett and Dylan Gabriel on the official depth chart. He just has a dad who's a Hall of Famer. That's it. That's it, guys. That's it. And don't get me wrong, did he not? He impressed. I know I said it last week, too. And I do believe that. Don't get me wrong. Do I think Joe Flacco, Dylan Gabriel, or all these guys are going to win the Browns any more games than Shedeur would? Probably not. Probably not. I think Shedeur Sanders is going to get you 3 to 4 wins in the NFL. I think Joe Flacco is going to get you 4 to 5 wins in the NFL. I think Dylan Gabriel is getting you 3 to 4 wins in the I think all these guys are not getting the Browns a lot of wins. It's not a good situation to be in if you're the Cleveland Browns. But I think it is a little bit of a reality check for everybody who's like, especially, me being a Saints fan, all those Saints fans down there still sitting, we should have drafted Shedeur. He is fourth on the depth chart in a quarterback room that might be worse than the Saints quarterback room. The only reason you could call that Browns quarterback room better is because of Joe Flacco's history. And the fact that Joe Flacco was a great quarterback and has won in his past. And the Saints quarterback room is just extremely young and there's no veteran presence there. You got the veteran presence in Joe Flacco, someone who's won a Super Bowl, been to multiple AFC championships, someone who has won. That's the only reason why I give that Browns quarterback room a nod. But Shedeur Sanders in a quarterback room with Kenny Pickett, Dylan Gabriel, and Joe Flacco are the 3 people listed above him. Stop it with the glazing, guys. Stop it. Stop it with the Shedeur Sanders glaze. Please. Please. I'm done with it. We get it. He's Deion's son. He got his number retired for going 9-7 and winning the Alamo Bowl. Good job. You got your number retired. At Colorado. We got to stop it, man. And I thought it was going to stop when people realized that he fell that far. Because it did with Johnny Manziel. I'll be honest. The minute Johnny Manziel fell to the end of the first round, people were like, ooh, maybe they saw something we didn't because they're the NFL execs. With Shedeur, it's like, oh, everyone's wrong. He's great. Everyone's wrong. And maybe I will sit here in 5-6 years and I'm going to look like an idiot and I'm going to be posted on coldest takes. It's possible. I won't lie. It's all possible. But I'm going to be honest. I don't see it. I don't see it. Did he play well last week? Yeah. Did he not play as great this week? Yeah. Is he playing in a system that anybody would dare to run against an NFL defense in week 1? No. No, not at all. If you ran the schemes that Shedeur Sanders looked good in on 2 weeks ago, week 1 against whoever they play, because I can't remember it off the top of my head, Shedeur Sanders is throwing 3 picks, and he's going 4 for 9. It's not happening. It's not happening. Speaking of rookies, though, a lot of rookies, played a little bit better this week that a lot of people are impressed of. Again, it's preseason. I say that all the time. Same thing. You're doing simple stuff. I think preseason's bigger when you see a running back go off like a Genthy or like a Trevon Henderson has been doing over there in New England and with the Raiders than it is for a quarterback. I say the same thing for defensive players. I don't think it's as big for defensive players because you're running as base defensive schemes as you can run. I think it's bigger for linebackers than it is for DBs. You know what I'm saying? Because I think it's bigger. I think the preseason matters more in the run game because the run game is more heart and grit than the pass game is a little more scheme, if we're going to be honest. Throwing the ball is a little more scheming. So Genthy looked very good against the 49ers, even though they lost, trucked someone, had 33 yards, 7 carries, had a touchdown. So he looked good after a lot of people were scared after last week. People were happy with Cam Ward this week, even though statistically it didn't look great. Trayvon Henderson looked great again. So, rookies will be rookies, and they'll rookie in preseason. And I know that sounded like the dumbest thing anybody's ever heard, but it's every year that this happens where, being in this area, at least around the media over here, 2 years ago, Jalen Hyatt was going to win Rookie of the Year and all that. And it's always how this goes. Everyone's loving Dart. Everyone's hating Fields. Fields played 2 drives. Dart played against the backup defense. It's I said it to my brother earlier today. Talk. It's not happening. Half these guys are going to be traded. Trade rumors are big right now, too, especially around this time of year. The Trey Hendrickson thing is finally heating up, and I think it's about time. It seems Cincinnati refuses to pay him, and he already said, I refuse to play on this contract. And good luck, man. And I feel bad for Joe Burrow. I feel so bad for Joe Burrow. And Trey Hendrickson could end up in a lot of interesting places, man. Like Detroit, Philly, maybe Philly after losing Montez Sweat goes after a sack leader like that just to bring back the pass rush that they had last year. Buffalo, New England, got to throw Green Bay in there just like with Micah Parsons. Like these pass rushers are those spots that are winning now. I saw a lot of rumors about Vegas too, maybe making a shot at it to put him against across from Max Crosby. So, it'll be interesting to see how this heats up because it was just announced today that they're looking at trades or yesterday. So it'll be really interesting to see how this whole Trey Hendrickson situation heats up. I'd expect the package to be similar to what the Khalil Mack package was for 3 or 4 years ago, which someone today that I was watching made the same comparison, and they said, and if I remember correctly, the Mack deal was like 2 firsts for Khalil Mack and a second or something like that when he went to Chicago. I could definitely see the package for Trey Hendrickson being a first and a third for just him, or a first and a second for him and a fifth, maybe players involved. But, I mean, if I'm a team that's looking to win now and needs a little bit help on the pass rush, really wants to improve that pass rush, I watched him as he broke out before he signed in Cincinnati when he was down there in New Orleans. Trey Hendrickson is good, man. He's a talent. And this is the time of year right before the season gets started with all these contract disputes and all of this going on. You get a lot of these good players that even if you want to, you can rent them for a year and see how it goes if you're one of those teams. You have Brian Robinson Jr. also with a lot of trade rumors as a running back. When you're a team that could use that running back talent, like, you know what I mean? Like a KC or a Pittsburgh or a Cincinnati. I know a lot of people like Chase Brown, but you could use a running back talent like Brian Robinson Jr. in that room. Even Dallas, because they got Javonte Williams. Jaden Blue might end up being the starter, the rookie they drafted, but you got a lot of good players that are going to be up for trade, going to get cut, going to sign. The Colts also signed Xavier Howard same day that they just announced Danny Dimes as a starter after Xavier Howard took a year off of football. The NFL rumor mill heats up around this time of year. Now, it just started to heat up, so I haven't really built all my stuff. We'll probably get into a big rumor mill show next week, maybe. I might get that out there. Maybe next week we get a big rumor mill show going. But that is all I got for you guys today. Not the best show, sadly. I've just honestly been working a lot. Didn't get as much research in as I wanted to. But trying my best out here, guys. I'm here to have fun, talk about sports, interact with you guys. That's why always, if you guys are watching this video later, but always come to the lives. I like to interact with the chat. One of my friends said it the other week. He said he loves it when I interact with the chat. I like to interact with you guys. I feel like a robot. Just like you guys say I sound like a robot sometimes when I'm not interacting with chat and just going by schedule. When the chat's not going off or, I got no one to bounce off of, I do feel kind of robotic. Trying to convince some friends to start coming down here to bounce off me. Maybe get my Jamie for you Joe Rogan fans, Get my guy behind the camera, my Zito for you Pat McAfee fans to compare to some others. But that is all I got for you guys today. Thank you guys all for tuning in. If you guys tuned in later on the YouTube, please subscribe. We go live here every Tuesday from 2 to 3 p.m. Always tune in. Like I said, I love to interact with you guys. I would love to have more people watch this live. I've been looking at my views recently post going live, and they are higher than they ever have before. You know, they're not numbers that are impressive. It's only 55, stuff like this, but it's impressive to me. It means a lot to me that you guys do view this stuff, and it would mean a lot to me if you guys start to tune in live if you can. I understand people are working. It's not the easiest, but it would mean a lot. And those of you who do tune in live, thank you. That's all I got for you today. I will see you guys next week, same time. Peace out, everybody.